Good evening, everyone. It's me, Dr. Plague. We talk a lot about horror on this channel, but the real horror out there is how easy it is for your data to fall in the hands of disreputable people. That's why today's video is sponsored by Aura. While you're enjoying today's spooky video, data brokers, those things that go bump on the web, could already be selling your information to scanners, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, your health records, your relatives, they could all be out there. That's why I've been using Aura. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests, just for me. It was simple to use and very intuitive, and I had barely gotten out of the setup process, and it was already blocking over 20 data broker requests on my behalf. Aura protects your passwords, your banking information, everything you need for day-to-day online life. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it also protects me from hackers who could use my information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, other sensitive information. Things like a certain YouTube channel that you all enjoy listening to so much. Aura also does much more to protect me and my family from online threats, the kind you can't see. It comes with other features like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more, without having to download several different apps. It really is just that easy to set up, and best of all, I get everything at one affordable price. I hear you saying, but Dr. Plague, I have one or two of these tools already. But, dear readers, not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Readers of my fine tales can tell you why that never ends well. Aura is always on, doing the hard work of keeping me safe so I can focus on other tasks like finishing my latest book or uploading my most recent video. I value my privacy, and I know you value yours. You can go to Aura.com, that's AURA.com, to start your 2-week free trial. You can also check out the link below and start your free trial with Aura. So why not give Aura a try and protect yourself from the real monsters out there? Something just occurred to me. These last few nights have been the first in years I've gotten through stone sober. Having a few beers after work was just a matter of course, like taking medication before bed so you don't feel sick. If it was a particularly bad day, I'd end up overdoing it and condemn myself to wake up the next morning with a murderous hangover and the knowledge that yet another potentially productive afternoon was slipping through my fingers. But now, I feel focused, fulfilled, like I'm doing something that matters for the first time. The head mistress has the place under lockdown, of course. Every window covered and sealed, multiple lanky security agents attending every class, gas occasionally flushed through the ventilation systems. For a woman so emotionless, the slight perspiration on her brow was basically her equivalent of a nervous breakdown. And yet, of course, she demands that her precious teacher schedules be maintained through thick and thin. I don't mind. I like to think that I was helping keep the kids sane, although really it was more like the other way around. I noticed the kids didn't bother to hide their less human features anymore, like Billy's arm stretching a macabre 17 feet to collect his graded paper from my desk, or Abigail climbing along the walls like a spider during recess. Made me smile somehow, like they were letting me in on their secret world that most people never get to see. I was just reading them a cute little book about how a human boy and a Wendigo learned to set aside their differences when the bell rang, and there she was at the door, ushering me with a finger. "So, who is this Saladin guy anyway?" I asked, as she led me down the hall. "A hunter, perhaps the most skilled we know of in the modern age, with a reputation for being capable of punching above his weight class, so to speak," she explained. "We thought we had him occupied chasing false leads across Bangladesh. To think that he was here in America all along, that he was slowly narrowing in on our exact location this whole time, and we never knew. She clenched a hand into a fist. For her, the equivalent of a scream of frustration. Why did he decide to target, me? Because you're the first fully human teacher this school has ever had, she confessed. You were an unpredictable experiment, even though it may introduce many risk factors, such as this. I thought it would do good for the children to have experience with a regular, everyday human. Did you really choose me because I was a loner? Someone expendable? She didn't seem to have heard the question, or maybe she was pretending she hadn't heard the question. Saladin always pursues more covert means of achieving his ends at first. He likes to take his quarry by surprise, but if that fails, as it now has, his plan B invariably involves some form of overwhelming force. But there is good news, at least. Thanks to the efforts of you and Katie, he was forced to leave behind his weapon of choice. From her sleeve, she produced that blade that Saladin had put against my throat, the one that would have dealt the killing blow to Katie if I had been a second later. It was jagged and black and looked primitive, just a bit dazzling with the scarlet streaks embedded in its surface. What's so special about it, I asked. It's a blade of obsidian, damascened with alaphotis. To put it simply, it will cut through anything. I reached out to feel its shiny surface, but she jerked it away from me. I would recommend you avoid even so much as touching it. It may have deleterious effects on a regular human being. For some reason, I was reminded of Saladin's words. When dealing with monsters of the occult for long, there are two options: sacrifice your life or your humanity. There is no third path. We came upon a heavy iron door in some obscure corner of the school, and she set about unlocking multiple tiers of locks. I apologize, Mr. Vermeil. I know you appreciate your autonomy, but I must insist that you remain within the complex for the duration of the lockdown. That means staying in the dorms, the bunker down the mountainside. I'm sure you've noticed it. Is this some sort of secret path? The school's access tunnels provide secure routes to many places, but I must confess, while the school itself is made to provide a safe and welcoming front for human visitors, the tunnels are not. They were never intended for your kind. She paused. Even she seemed the slightest bit nervous. There are many dangers down here, so I must ask that you stay by my side and do exactly as I say when I say it. Do you understand? She didn't have to ask me twice. I immediately saw what she meant when we stepped into the tunnels. They were definitely not designated for human use. They were horrifically claustrophobic labyrinths of concrete, to the point I sometimes had to bend down or angle myself sideways just to squeeze through. This was suffocating. Hallways of seemingly random shapes and sizes, just in every direction, and I had no idea how she'd memorize which to take. All it took was a single moment, a single instance of lapsed concentration, a single glance away as my clothes caught on a hunk of concrete, and she was gone. To be honest, I don't do well with cramped spaces, and when it fully sunk in that she had vanished and I was alone down here in the dark, my first instinct was to crumple into a ball and start sobbing. Embarrassingly, I had to calm myself down in the exact same way I calmed my students when they were having a tantrum. I talked through my feelings, took deep breaths, grounded myself. You've been through so much worse than some tight hallways, I thought. Keep it together. But every step forward was a Herculean effort, like I was knee-deep in sludge. All I had to light my way was my little phone flashlight, and the darkness around me seemed to somehow be fighting back against the light, and it was rapidly taking territory. I'd venture forward, down a hall, and it'd get tighter and tighter with every step, so I'd turn around, and somehow the same thing would happen on the way back. Was I losing my mind down here in the dark, or were the walls really closing in on me, like I was about to be crushed by the peristolic motion inside some cyclopean creature? And every so often, I'd run into one of those shed skins, like I'd seen in the ditch outside the school all those days ago. They'd tangle around me like spider webs, and I'd cry out as I thrashed to tear them off me. On a closer look, they didn't seem reptilian in the slightest. They looked human. And then, down the hall, came a sound. I breathed a sigh of relief. "Oh, thank God," I called out. "Headmistress, I'm right." Then came another sound, the guttural crackling of a snarl rising from an unnatural throat. I realized that I had just drawn the attention of something terrible. I bit my tongue to stifle a gasp. Mentally, I screamed at myself over how stupid I'd been. I tried to turn my flashlight off, but I ended up dropping my phone and illuminating the entire hall. All I could do was back up as far as I could, press my back to the dead end, and wait for whatever was coming to me. Footsteps in the dark, of a sort of hobbling, awkward gait. In the dim light, a silhouette came vaguely into view. It looked roughly the size of a man, but the proportions were all wrong. The shapes, it was like a child's drawing of a human being. Too angular, too thin. Along that jagged form was a garden of tumorous growths, hair and teeth, and blind half-formed eyes poking from malignant tumors, cushioned in almost scrotal pockets of loose and wrinkled flesh. There was no head above its shoulders. Instead, there was a limp, swaying tube of flesh, and when it faced me, I could see down into the countless rows of teeth lining that esophageal tube like a lamprey eel. Some sort of black ichor drooled from the undulating tube as the creature stood where my phone had landed, creaking and groaning in place. Then the thing turned and shuffled back into the darkness. It was blind. Of course, it had been investigating the last noise it had heard. I thanked whatever gods may be and clung to my little corner of what felt like hours before finally working up the courage to retrieve my phone with a shaky hand, and kept creeping down the halls. Another noise. My blood froze in my veins, but when the headmistress's face emerged from the darkness, I almost cried out in relief. "Oh, thank God. I lost you, and why didn't you warn me about that creature down there, that blind, leech-looking thing?" I demanded. "I know you said it was dangerous, but I can't believe you let something like that just go waltzing around down here." For the first time in my life, I saw the headmistress go pale. "We don't." This time she kept a hand squeezed around my wrist, and she was practically sprinting down the hall. We came to an observation deck, observing what looked like some sort of containment chamber. One of those security agents laid sprawled across the floor, split in two. The chamber below was littered with those shed skins, as well as chunks of other things I couldn't name. She looked down at the empty chamber with bewilderment. "The cancer, it's really out. Who would ever do this? The Cancer? Why is it called... She swallowed her fear. Because that's simply what it is. A walking cancer. Cells growing and dividing, aimlessly, uselessly, limitlessly. She gestured to herself. From it, we grow these human skins we wear, guide its ceaseless growth to build our new bodies, piece by piece. Automatically, in accordance to some built-in schedule, a red light clicked on in the containment unit, accompanied by an industrial wail. Chunks of red viscera dropped from tubes in the ceiling, and amidst the meat, I swore I saw hands, feet, clothes. You feed people to that thing? She sighed as if my human emotions were an inconvenience. The meat is recovered from cemeteries and morgues. Don't lose your composure now. We have to focus. She laid out the situation. Every cancer wants to spread, wants to feed itself. It'll find a way out before long, and when it does, that won't exactly bode well for the people of our cozy little mountain town. Whoever did this disconnected all the emergency switches down there, and we didn't have any signal. We couldn't go all the way back to gather information. We had to handle this now. On our way out, we found another of those security agents, sat near one of the control consoles by the containment chamber. This one, I almost didn't recognize as human at first. A man-sized tumor had mostly consumed him, that hairy, throbbing mass bulging as we rose as we neared it, as if sensing a threat. Only one arm and its head poked free of the malignant growth, eyes wide and yellow, mouth hanging open breathlessly. The headmistress stood over him coldly. It was you. You did this. May I ask why? He croaked out a few words in a slow wheeze. Saladin had my family. She nodded without a word and ended his life with the Damascus blade dispassionately. I guess it was a mercy at that point. I felt helpless, unarmed like this. Being the bait was an unenviable position. God, I wished I could get my hands on that blade of hers. I was fighting a panic attack as we went creeping through those halls again, until the headmistress stopped us with an upraised hand. I was confused for a moment until I strained my eyes. There it was, that wheezing, shuddering croak from down the hall. She gestured. I nodded, took a deep breath, and got into position. She hid around another of the corners as I braced myself, and clapped. The immediate roar from down the hall sent such chills through me that my legs almost gave out from underneath me. The thing came sprinting down the hall, full force, drool flickering everywhere as its tube-like head flopped around from the movement. I closed my eyes and waited for the end. The headmistress popped out just at the right time. Seizing the moment, she struck her blade right behind the thing's back, leaving it thrashing on the end of it like a field mouse impaled on a spade fork. With speed no human could match, she took chunks out of it, the sort of chunks that, even if it could heal back, it wasn't. With a swing of its long head, it battered away at her, and when I stepped forward to help her, it impaled me through the chest with that writhing tube and stole my breath. It was pale and shivering as I held my hands against the bleeding wound. This is it, I thought. This is how I die. The life that flashed before my eyes was pretty dull, but at least it got pretty interesting right at the end. But darkness didn't come creeping through the edges of my vision like I expected. Instead, I felt a tingling down below. I looked down at my chest and witnessed the wound closing. No, wait. Metastasizing. Bulging pustules of permeating tumors filled the gap in my flesh, ripe with patches of hair and little chunks of teeth, just as the creature had had. I screamed at the agony of it as the cancer cracked through my ribs and pushed my heart and lungs aside. Then, those tiny, bony hands settled on either side of my head, and yanked it upwards with a strength that should have been impossible. In a rational world, it would have ripped it off. Instead, I felt jolted high into the air and realized my neck had been extended a good few feet through the sheer cancerous tissue, like a character from some morbid cartoon. My head bobbed on its distended neck like a jack-in-the-box as I was left staring down at my own body. Every single thing the creature did to me just created more of me to fill the wound. Oh God, I thought, it won't even let me die. It was the very distant singing of birds down another hall that ultimately drew the beast's attention away. It visibly quivered as if realizing that it had found a way out, and all we could do was watch as the thing tore off into the darkness, roaring to itself as if in triumph. I don't know how many hours passed. I'm in the infirmary now, largely returned to normal. The three-eyed nurse seemed bored, even as she treated me, with the medicine and surgeries no earthly doctor would have even recognized. Reversing, slowly and by degrees, the impossible ways the beast had twisted and reshaped my body, I've at least regained some control of my physical faculties, but in the process I've been exposed to whole new categories of pain. Types of agony I thought were impossible. Types I never would have known had I gotten a job at another school. But the poor head mistress in the bed next to me, she seems more miserable still, shell-shocked even, her eyes sunken and haunted. "He'll be back," I can hear her whisper. "He'll let the cancer gorge itself, grow and grow, and then he'll be back." You're still here. Thanks so much for joining us for tonight's spooky tale. If you'd like a little bit more spooky in your life, why not click on one of the videos that appears at the end of our story, or maybe head on over to one of our playlists where you can get your fill of spooky content. If you like your spooky a little more tactile, I've got a new book that's come out. If you'd like your own copy, there's a link below in the description where you can get your own copy of my spooky book. If you like what you see here on the channel and think you might like to support in a more monetized way, then why not come over to Patreon or become a member on YouTube? Speaking of, let's go ahead and thank our members now. Thanks to Civ Garstad, Unicorn Hollow, and Army Dude for being our spooky ghost contributors. Thanks to Janet, Lee Kendall, Saikat, Ronda J, Sue Casper, and Valinator for being our spooky skeleton contributors. And thanks to Oh Snap, Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Stephanie Carrington, Tyler Parker, Cinnamon Fox, Grim Reaper, TomBoiTopUwU, and Queen Sheebah for being our ghostly reader tier contributors. And a big thanks to Scott Donahue for being our ghostly writer tier contributor. Thanks everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you'd like to support the channel, then come on down to Patreon or become a member on YouTube. Spooky Skeleton tier contributors, that's our $5 tier, get their spooky 12 hours early at 8:30 a.m. as opposed to 8:30 p.m. my time, of course. And while Ghostly Reading is only a tier that's available on Patreon, you get a signed copy of my book anytime I write one on your doorstep in, hopefully, a timely manner. If you'd like a book, we have many on Amazon. I've got links below if you'd like to follow those. Should get you to my page so you can buy any one of my 8 books I believe we're up to now. I'm sure they'd look really nice on your shelf, and I'll sign them for you if you can find me out in the wild. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.